I pursue a Bachelor of Science in Software Engineering. And we have been having so many communications on our WhatsApp groups and what we expect to do as web development track. So in web development, we have a very good support from our mentors. So we have at the moment we have to almost 21 mentors. We can applaud for that because that's a very huge number that of people who have volunteered to come and to help us learn. So all these mentors have divided them into different groups, and they will be there to help you out because we can take these sessions that we're having on Wednesdays as something like a tutorial, something that you come here like our whole family, and then we learn something. But the mentorships groups is where like you get even to have the hands-on skills sessions with all of this. Okay, so today we are being joined by two of our mentors. I think even Javed is in three of our mentors. We still even let them to even talk with us also after the session. Okay, let's now get started on what we are going to do today. So last week we covered something on HTML. That's the hypertext markup language, and also we covered something on Git and GitHub. And what we did is that we just written some of the HTML tags, and at the end of it, we came to learn of some of the commands on Git, and then we just had to take our project from our local repository to a remote repository that was on GitHub, and that was like it was so easy for us, and it was an introduction. And I really hope that you've already watched the video on YouTube because that's where we uploaded it, where it was so simple for you to go and preview. Even you can download from YouTube, and that's it, that you can have to even follow up more closely. And you'll also be meeting in groups with your mentors because your mentors are people who have been doing this way for quite some time. And they'll be able to guide you more on how you can. The good motivation. So I think that us having the mentorship sessions and also these sessions is for all of us to gain those skills. So today we are going to do things in reverse order. So because last week we ended up like pushing everything that we had done to GitHub. So today we're going to start from GitHub, coming back to our local repository. So I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can someone confirm that my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So what we're going to do today, we are going to start by having our repository from GitHub. And the main reason why you feel that Git and GitHub is being repeated is because it's a tool that will be required to know as a developer or as a software engineer working on developing websites and all of that. So by knowing how to use this tool, like you'll be even comfortable in everything that you're doing. So last week, what we did is that we initialized our Git repository from our local computer, and then we pushed it to GitHub. But today we want to do it in a reverse order. Say that we first create a repository, and then we clone that repository to our local machine. And then after we now clone everything to our local machine, we start coding our project from that point. So the things that we learned today is these concepts of Git and GitHub. Then we'll now talk about some of the how now we can work with HTML and CSS. And I think those are the things that we learned for today. So the concepts are not so challenging that someone new cannot understand, but it's so easy if you follow along. So okay, this is my GitHub account, and I really hope that everyone created a GitHub account because that was the prerequisite before we started our sessions. So I just came here to my profile, and I now this is the overview of my GitHub. So on my GitHub, I'm called Gameboy590. So all of the codes that we'll be doing, I'll be having them among these repositories. So the repositories, so a repository is like a folder. So please let's mute our mics whenever we are not communicating because it will hinder others. Okay, So last week, what we did was the intro to web. So this is the repository itself. So if there's something that you wanted to check, you can go there and even check what we did. So to create a repository, like how I mentioned, you just go to the repositories and then you create a new repository. So this is the where you click. And then let me give the name of the repository. Let's say today it's HTML and CSS. Nice. So you can give the descriptions of your repository, or you can just leave it. Ensure that you leave it to public when you want to work with other people. But if you want to work by yourself, you can just leave it as private. You can add a README file if you wish to. Then you can just create a repository. So we're doing things in reverse. So I say that whenever you're working with a project that it's already started, by then you'll be required to clone a repository from the project that had already been initialized. Okay. So first thing is to git clone a minute. So first of all, a minute. I don't know if I think we could set up a README file before we started, because all of this will require us to start from the other end. Okay, let's just have something that has a README file, because this had no README file. So I'm sorry for that. So we'll just initialize everything and we have a README file so that you can be able to have the link that you can clone. Let me check if we have the HTTP link that you can clone. Okay. Yeah, I think it is. So we can, if you have done this before, okay, we can set up. Okay, but let's just set up with README file. So let's just go and just create a new repo. So I'm sorry for that. I'll just delete that. So let me create a new repository. So the repository name will have to change it, so it will be HTML, CSS, and Git. Nice. So we'll now add a README file so that we can be able to have a choice to clone it. So remember to have a README file before you start, and then create a repository.
But Kimboy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a must you have a README on the repo. You can also clone an empty repo.
I think I never saw the choice to do that. Okay.
Yeah, there is. You just copy the link, the HTTPS link, and you clone it as normal repo.
Okay. So
but it's okay. You can go on with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw this kind of a link when we created the first continue that, but there's no problem. Let's clone this so that maybe in the next session we'll have somebody else cloning the empty repository. Thank you, Dennis. So I'm just going to copy this, and then I'll go to my VS Code. First of all, let me just create even an empty folder. Yeah, I think we have this. The web dev folder just has the images and .git. I'm going to get rid of the .git, just deleting that. So the image is the image that we had last week, the group photo. Okay, let me just open this with VS Code. So this is how you get things started, by setting up everything. So this is it. Now just open the terminal. So the two ways of opening a terminal is Control tilde, or you can just come here to view. Then you not a view, it's here. Then you say terminal. Then you say new terminal. But also you're being given a choice here to Control Shift tilde. Okay. So here's my terminal. So the command to clone a repository is git clone. Then we give the link that we've copied, HTTP link, then enter. So we are cloning the repository from GitHub. So like a repository is stored is something like a folder that holds other files inside it. So let's wait for it to wind up cloning. Okay, so we are done with the cloning. And if we try and check what we have, you can see the repository that you created was the HTML, CSS, and Git is already with us, and we have the readme.md with us. These are files. So we'll proceed from this point. Okay, I'll want to have these images inside here, so I'll drag and drop it inside, and then say I want to move it there, so that you can have a folder that has everything. So it's good to have a folder with a main folder that has everything inside of it. So what we shall proceed by creating an HTML file. That's an index.html. And anytime when there's a glitch in my sound or you can't hear me, you can unmute the mic and then tell me maybe if I'm not audible enough. Because sometimes maybe we are in a meeting and then maybe you can't hear what I'm saying clearly. Okay, we just proceed with what we did last week, just creating an empty file. So I gave you a way in which you can create a boilerplate is by not control, shift, and that mark, I don't know what's the exclamation mark, and then press enter. It will just give you this boilerplate that you can start with. But if you want to start it from afresh by typing it all of it, it's also fine. So okay, let me just name the title of our document to my project, and then can still set up a body with maybe an H2. Let's give an H tag, H1 tag, and say welcome. Can give it in caps. Welcome to my website. Then let's just preview everything that is working. Just go live using the live server.
And I hope
Yeah,
everyone
you can
is
see welcome
following
to
up.
my website is already here. So today we want to cover something on HTML and CSS. So I want to introduce what is CSS. So CSS stands. Yeah, sure. By the way, you can be able to unmute whenever you feel that I'm rushing things up, and especially if you've never done this before. Be sure to interrupt and tell me to maybe go slow on this. Okay. So we're now talking about the CSS. CSS is the cascading style sheets. So it's used to style our web page. So when you look at how this website looks, it's not like the normal website that you always visit, because this just like seems like a boring website that haina urembo. So that's kind of like you have to sell this website to even look pleasing to the customers. So a customer will not accept a website that was already written HTML. So you need also to have some of the colors having it. You'll have to give some background colors like that, or maybe adding some images, styling them. So that's the work of a CSS in a website. So you have to style everything. So there are three types of CSS. Let me call them types. So different way of how you can write CSS. You can have the inline CSS, CSS. I think that is it. We have the second one called internal CSS, and we have the last one known as external CSS. So we want to start from this basic one known as the inline CSS. After we learn what is inline CSS, we'll now go to internal CSS. And then lastly, we'll wind up with this one known as the external CSS. And we'll learn many different things. I will be measuring them as we get to that point. So maybe to make it now is that I will be able to learn things like classes, we learn the ID attributes that we give to the tags on HTML tags. We learn also the selectors. You can just note this down so that you can also have a research on them. We learn things, something known as a property. And at last, we learn as so property, and then we'll have a value. So these are the things that you need to know when you want to work with HTML and CSS. So let's start with inline CSS. So I'll just have this removed. So I hope if you're writing it somewhere down, these are the things that we're going to cover today. So after we cover this, we'll be able now to work with HTML and CSS, and you'll be good to go. Okay, let's start with inline CSS. So when we talk about the inline CSS, is having to style your HTML inside, like not creating a file outside. Like for instance, we have here welcome to our website. So what if I want is welcome to our website? In this one, just come in there within that angle bracket and then say style. You can see the Visual Studio Code will give you some auto completion. Just click enter, and then maybe you want to change the colors. Just say color. Let's give a color like, let's say red. Just remove that semicolon at the end. So you have style, color, red. Let's check what happened. Well, it's not a red color, but it changed color. I think because I'm sharing my screen. Okay, let's change the color to a different color. Oh, this one I never exhibited a red color. Let me give it a red color. Red color, exactly. So these are red color. So you can see how I can now give styles to my HTML tags. So this is called the inline styling. So assume that I had also some p tags over here, and I want to give some styles also, maybe even the body. So I can say the body, I can say background. So I'll be explaining why do you say background, what do you why do I say all of this. So first of all, we say we start with a style, sorry. So a style, and then you say maybe you want to give the background color. So maybe I want to give the color of my background to be something like green. Gray. So I want to give all of my body. The whole of the body is like giving the whole of the screen this kind of a color. You just say style, background, color, and then you give the value itself as gray. So just check the output. You can see the color has changed from white to a gray color. So this is inline styling. So these are the things that you will even find yourself sometimes when you don't want to write something from a different file, you can just use an inline styling. But what are the disadvantages of using inline styling? Like it's also like you'll be having like a mix of HTML and CSS in your files, and it won't even look good. And whenever you want to give some multiple styles to even the body, like it gives you a challenge to that. So I want to explain what you've seen here is we don't have selectors. Okay, here we have only the property. So let's first explain what's a property. So a property, when you talk about a property, is the aspects that you want to change from the element itself. So for instance, this H1 tag, let me just increase the fonts there. I think that's now good. So when you talk about the property itself, it's like what we've seen here is like we want to have like for example the color. We say the color to be red. So the property, the aspect that we want to change from this H1 tag is the color itself. So the color is the property here, and then red is the value. So that is value. So that's good for you to know in this. So never forget to use the word style so that you can show that this as inline CSS to an inline styling. So we're good with that. So let's talk about the second one. We'll talk about internal CSS. So let me get rid of all inline CSS. Then we go for internal CSS. Okay, nice. So when we talk about internal CSS, it's like now we want to write over all of our HTML first, then we style them. So by that we can say like we can give a div. So So we can say div. So this div will have the welcome to my website over there. And then down here, we can also have another div. Maybe this div has a paragraph, and the paragraph tells people some information about this website. So I'm going to give some long text, but it doesn't make sense. So this is like a text you can write in a website. And then at last, we can have an image. So we can have another div, and this div has an image. So I'm going to demo again how will you have an image imported into your HTML files. So you can see I have a folder here known as images, and it's very important that you always have this folder whenever you want to work with different files. So maybe if you have some documents, also it's good to create maybe some assets folder that will have the images and maybe icons of whatever kind, rather than having to navigate back to your local machine to get all these images. So it's good to have this image over here. So I want to use this group image. So what will I do? I'll just source it from there by going to images and then going to group image.jpg. You can give the alt attribute, and it's always a good norm to give the alt attribute. The alt attribute, I said, is going to show whenever maybe the image does not show, or whenever even the internet is slow. Somebody can be told, okay, this is a group photo. You can just give you a group photo. So that's good to go. So we can just preview and see what we have. Let me go live once again. So you can see we have our website going good. But okay, we have now to stay on this website. You can see the image is even too big. We can have this text is so large, and we have the what? Welcome to my website is too big for us. So when you talk about inline styling, I think there's somebody. Please mute your mic, please.
Yeah, you are muted.
We can't hear.
I'm sorry, I think somebody has muted me, but no problem. You cannot hear me, right?
Yeah.
Go back.
Okay, sorry for that. So I was explaining where you can now have your internal styles. So when trying to define that, you'll always have it inside the header tags. And I said the header tag last time that header tags will always contain the main information of your website. Like for example, the meta, I said that the meta will always give the chassis that you're using. So you're using the UTF-8. The meta will always give the viewport. This is the title. So we're going also to have our styles over here. So this is internal CSS. So we just define it by giving the style. So we just give the style. After giving the style like this, I'm sorry for the copilot. So after giving the style, we now have to write everything. Like now I want to give, let me just disable this copilot. Nice. So the style that we're going to give, so let's start by styling our whole body, because you can first see the body is still white. So let's give a different color in the body. So you can say body. So body and then curly braces. So this is how we give when you want to assign a style to something. So you first have to pick that thing that you want to give the style, and that thing we have to give the style is known as the selector. So we are selecting all of the body and say, okay, we want to give a style to it. So we can say we want to change the background color of our body to the gray color that we had. Let me save and then we will check how it looks like. So you can check our body has not changed the color. Because I want to work on different things, let's first make sure this image is a little bit smaller, because I think it's so huge. So what should the image? So what you can do, even you can just come over here and just give a width of maybe 500 pixels of it. So we'll be talking about these values like 500 pixels, and also have other values that we can give to our CSS. So you can see the image is now smaller. So okay, now let's now target our paragraph is still too long. Let's just break it down by giving the BR, that's a break. So we're breaking the lines into different lines. Nice. So we can just preview to see. You can see the lines are now very short. Now let's now continue to our body. So coming up to the body, how not to explain. So I said that we're going to explain like what you see outside here is a selector. This is a selector that selects like all of the body will be in this color that is gray. So because we've already talked about this is a property and this is a value. So let's talk about second thing. We're going to now say maybe I want to place all of these items to the center because now they're to the left of it. So by default, everything will be at the left. But now, what if I want these things to be at the center? So I'll just say here, I want now to text align center. Then we save. You can see everything that we have in our body is now available in the center. So let me look for a better color for the background because it looks so dark. So let me just come over here, come for a better color. Nice. I think this is a better color for us. So, okay, now let's now target more of the styling. So let's say now we want to target the H1. So I wanted to introduce something known as classes, not even IDs. So let me start with a class. So if you want to give, for example, you are working with a very huge, with a website that has many different pages and that you will be having a lot of H1s. But let me just start with it without a class. Let me just work first of it with a H1. Let me say I have so many H1s over here. Then I'll demo that. I have almost 3 lines of H1s. Maybe you can, let's just give it the same text. And then over here, just come and say H1. Then you want to style it. So you can just say we give a color. So a color is a property. Let's say let's give it a color of green. Just save it. Let's see what happens. You can see all of our 3 H1s are now in green color. So whenever you say H1, it says that all of the H1s that are available in our HTML to have a color of green. But what if I only wanted the only first line to have a different color? So you'll have to assign it something that will make it unique. So let's start even with an ID. An ID will give a uniqueness of element in our website. So I can say I want to give it an ID. So you just write an ID, then enter. So give the ID of it. So we can say first H1. So I'm just assigning whenever I do first H1 or maybe first H1, it will now mean that this is this is the H1 that I'm referring to, but not the second H1 I'm referring to. So let me copy this, the same the first H1. Let me copy the name. And then below here, let me just, I want to use the ID. What do you do? So you have to access it using, in the CSS, you have to refer it back. We are going to use the hash and then we give the name. So this like now pointing that I'm targeting the first H1 over here. So then here is when you give, let me now give a different color. So let me say the color of this, I want it to be blue color. Nice. So I'm giving the first H1 a different color. So let's check how it looks. You can see the first H1 has a different color, but the other still maintains the green color. Why is that? This is because the others are still H1s, and the one with the ID is the one that we are targeting. So this now a way that now we will be using to refer to our HTML tags. We'll be using IDs. I want to show you even how to use a class. So let me get rid of the other H1s because now we have now demoed how they work. So let's now target this paragraph over here and give it a class. Just write a class. A class will be given to style the different HTML tags that are available, and a style does not simplify the uniqueness of an element in HTML, but an ID does. For example, in here we can have so many paragraphs, but in here we cannot have so many H1s, like a welcoming message to our website. So a class is something that you always often find me using quite a lot. So let's say I want to give a class of description. Let me just make it short, the description like that. So just copy the name of it, and then just below the first H1, I want to use that class, and the class will refer to this paragraph tag. So how will you achieve that? By saying dot description. So that's description, and then we proceed. So when you're using a class, you use the dot. When you're using the ID, use the hash. Exactly. So you can say now, I want the paragraph to have a color. A color is a property. So I want to have a color of let me look for black, and then it shall change. So by default it's black, but how else can we have a black that is shaded? So this is how you hover around this black, you'll have this RGBA. You can also like tilt over here, you can have different black colors. Let's see how that looks like. You see, it's a faded black. How else can we have these colors? So we can just go to your browser and then look for HTML color codes. This is where you find all of the colors, because as a developer, there's some to be given to work on a project or a website. So you cannot be deciding on the colors that you'll be having. So this is a site where I usually get some colors. And some of the colors will be in form of the hex format code. You see, can start with an hash. And others you will find with RGBA. So we'll be using the hex ones. It's not standing over here. I think this website has some of the ads I don't want to interfere with. Okay, but this is where you get the color codes. Let me just use the color codes that I know in my mind at the moment. You can have the hex color codes like the hash FFF. I think this is white. So when you go to the website, you can see it's giving you some white color. So you can change it to some black. So I think it's hash 333. So this is the hexa colors. This is not a black, but somehow dark. Okay, we can now say I want to increase the sizes of these colors of these. I want to increase the color of these paragraphs. So I will say you want to increase the size. You just say you give a property known as font size, and we can say I want to give a font size of almost 18 pixels. So you have to give a value. So when you say 18 pixels, it's some kind of a value you want the size to be. You can see it's increasing. So the moment I still give a user a larger value, let's say 22, let's check it. You can see it's even much larger. You cannot even look at it. So let's go to another attribute. So you can say I want to give an attribute like we've talked about font size, we've talked about color. So we can say font weight. So when you say font weight, you are targeting if it's bold or even bolder. So let's talk about font weight that is bold and save it. Sorry, I'm going to different application. Here it is. You can see our paragraph is now a bold. So these are bold property. So it's not obvious that it's not always common that you'll have a bold paragraph. So let me have this bold with the H1 itself. That's even looks better. Okay, let's go back to our website and see how best can we have a good website. So let's target the image. I think the image even is good, but this is not the best we can have a website. We can still have so many other styling. So at this point, let me introduce the external styling, how you can style this page externally. So these were the internal styles. So what you have to take in of is that you will always have the styles inside the headers, but you'll have the body down at the body tags. So let's talk about external CSS. So this was internal CSS. So I'll just remove all of this over here. And the common style that we'll be using is the external CSS because it formats everything. Like you'll have your clean code. So I'll just leave the classes. And I think this is good. When you look at the website itself, you see it's back to the website that we started with earlier. Okay. When you talk about external CSS, is like I'm telling you that you have to create another file like the HTML file over here. So just click on the folder itself and then create a file. So this is a file over here, this is a folder. So create a file and name it. So I'll name mine styles.css. So it's good to name your files with the names that are the best convention ever. Like whenever you say styles.css, the first word styles is something that has always been used by developers. The term index.html, the term index by itself has been used by developers. It does not limit you to using even different names. So you can call either name you want, but it's good to have it to the convention itself. So we'll be writing our HTML document in the HTML, and we'll be writing our CSS in the CSS document over here. So first of all, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you link them. So where you link them is also at the header. So I told you the header will always have the crucial information. So to link an HTML and CSS, you will give the link. So we type the link, it will give you a rel to the style sheets and then the href. The href is pointing where your CSS is available. So mine is available at styles.css. So this is how you link your external CSS. So I never proceed to write your CSS before you link it. So whenever you just write your code without linking your CSS, it won't work. The styles will not be applied. So let's now proceed to write our external CSS file. So let me just go this ID known as first h1 over here. Because I said when you're targeting an ID, you have to use the hash first name h1, and then now we're going to give some styling. So we can say now I'll use the common things that we've learned, the color. So you can say this is the color of the red or better. So let's say red. Now we'll give some font size of 22 pixels. We'll give some the font weights. Font weights of let's give 500. 500. So this font weights range from almost 100 to even 700, and then it starts from bold to even bolder. So let's just preview. You can see the color has changed. Okay, nice. Let's just give sorry. So let's just give this as a bold because it's a H1. Other style that you can have for H1 is font family. If you want to change how they look, you can just go for font family. You have so many of them, and some of them even can import from Google or somewhere else. Let me go with Roman times serif. So you cannot. Let's go with even one. This being times serif is better. So you can see how the writing has been written. So if you already work with Word documents, you'll find yourself working with this kind of fonts. So that's all for H1. Let's style our P tag. But first of all, let's style our body. So we can say now, let's give over all of our body some attributes like background color. So the gray was better. So gray. Let me look for a better gray because that was dark. So let me look for this kind of gray. So then click on. So this a better color for my background. Close this. Okay, so this the background color I've applied. So let me now proceed to something else, like the paragraph. The p tag I gave a class of description. So just copy that. So how to use a description is dot description. Then I have to give the style. So I can say the description on it to have also the color of color. Can have it as look for a color. We can give it green color. Font size 22 pixels. Font. I think the font weight won't apply even quite well for, but we can have a font weight of like 400. What else do I want to target on that? I think that's good. To preview it, this how it looks. How? So let's make our items to be in the center. Let's say text align, just to center everything, text align center. Everything is at the center. Let's now target the image. How can we style an image? So the image has a div. So we can say, let's give this div a class, and we say image div. So you can your IDs in your HTML documents as you wish. So just make sure to have the correct one, have the image div, and we are targeting the image itself. So this is how you target the image itself. Nice. So you want to style the image. So if you want the image to be larger, so let me go there and get rid of this. We'll give width of 500. Just get rid of that. When you get rid of that, we'll have a very huge image. But I want to use the CSS to have this image smaller. So how can you do that? So we had the dots. We had the image class. So we want now to style it. So we can say I want the image to have a width of like almost now 500 pixels outside here. So okay, and then even when I say this image has a width of 500, this will be the div itself. This is the container that holds the image. So I'll now say I want now the width of the real image to be 100%. So these are the values that you'll be using. So the whole of the container will be 500 pixels, but the image will be 100% of the parent. Let me look at that, and you can see the image is now smaller. Now, when you want to center this image, you can see now the image is at the sides. Though I never wanted to talk about centering of items in this class, but I think this is the point whereby we can now talk about how else you can center your items. So if you want to center this image, there's some other attributes and properties that you will use. So those are how you will display items, and we'll proceed with that even next week. How you display items, even having this image adjacent to this text over here. So let's talk about that. Okay. So if you want to have your body, so I think you'll have to go back to your HTML minutes. So this is our body. So we want to have a div that wraps everything. What this div ends here. This div holds the paragraph, and this div holds the image. So I will add a div that wraps all the paragraph and the image. So what I'll do is on top of this. So when you're doing this, you have to be like you have to like know where your HTML starts and where your HTML ends. So I'll be picking the two. So here now the div. So how else you can write a div by saying dot. So give how else you can define a div and give a class. You can say dot, then let's say the parent uh, parent div. So it's unique. I never used this. Let me check. Yeah, I think this is unique. So I'll now have this div close below the image over here. So say that let me save my author that can intend. So when I click on this image, you can see it kind of points out where it started and where it ended. So and this is the best way how you can have your tags be contained. So when you find yourself like writing these divs without even knowing where it starts and ends, it will bring some issues even to your codes. So like it's good for you to always know where your div starts and where your div ends. So the thing that we talk about CSS about HTML is that it's going to structure your website. So the reason why I'm so much careful with my divs is that I would wish that when even you're writing your code or styling something, you get the clear understanding of why do you have a div having two items. Like for example, this parents div has this first div that has a paragraph, has an image. So this div has two different divs. So what I want to achieve is that I want to have this text at the left, and I want to have this image to the right. So like I want them to be adjacent to each other so that at least it can look appealing. Okay, so what I will do, I'll go to my styles.css, I'll remove the text align center. Now we want to style by ourselves. So with the description, I want to give, let me target first the parent div. I'll just copy that and use it over here. So dot parent div. So I want to give some attributes of this parent div. So I want to give some properties, I mean. So I'll say I want it to display flex. So displaying flex is like things to be displayed from left to right. You can see what has happened. The text has been displayed on the left and the image has been displayed on the right. Let's proceed to something else. Now, what you've seen here is that these things are close to each other. I would wish these things to like have a space in between here. What you'll do is like have to justify the content. So these are the things that you'll have to learn if you want to work with HTML and CSS. Like these properties, there are so many of them that you'll have to learn by even doing even more practice at researching of them. So there's a different ways of how you can justify content. You can justify content. Let's start with this space around. So when you say space around, so it's going to give. It's not an equal kind of thing that it does not equate that the size on the left side at the center and the at the end is the same, but it's going to give a wider space at the center. Let's first give a width of our paragraph so that we can see all of this. The width of a paragraph is at the description. So you can see it has a width of 500 pixels. So because our image has a div, has a width of 500 and our paragraph has a width of 500. Check out this. So you can see this space over here, and the space at the right are equal, but at the center you can find this is double of what we see at the left and at the right. Okay, let's look at other display content property. So we can say display justify content space between. When you say space between, you can see that there will be no spaces at the corners, like at the left and the right. You just be having a space in between them. So another property that we have is space between, space evenly. When you space evenly, the space at the margin left, at the center, and also at the end is equal. So I always like using space evenly because it always like balances, like to always have your adjacent elements at with the same spacing or margins. So there's something I'm now speaking of, that's margins. So the space between what you see at the end to this point is a margin. So something that's away from the outer element to your inner element, that's the margin. So there's something here I've also not mentioned. is the use of how you find your HTML and CSS documents. So you can see that by default, it does not fit into it. So there's some spaces that we find, so some margins that we have that we would wish to reset them back to default. So resetting them will have this. What do you always use? What's always the name of this aesthetic that we use? I think it's a universal that by default I would want my HTML and I would want my HTML tags to start from the margins, from the end. You can someone tell me on the chat. I think I'm forgetting the name. I think it's a universal indicator, not universal indicator. I think so. Can someone maybe tell me what that is? So we can say I want to give a margin of 0. Some of these things we'll be using a padding of also 0. And let's start with all of these two. So you'll realize something. The welcome to my website now has started from the far end. So from the first margin, so from the margin 0, it has started over there. Okay. Let me now proceed with the first H1. So I've realized the H1 is at the end. I would wish to have it at the center. So this is how you develop a website. Like you always see what does not look appealing and make it even more appealing. So you can say now text align. I want to have it at the center. Let's check on that. I'm sorry. You can come to my website is now at the center. Now I want some spaces between my welcome and the other things because they look like they are close together. So what I will do is I'll have a padding. So I'll speak of padding. Let me just give a padding of 10 pixels. You can see there's some spacing between them. Let me just increase them because for demonstration purposes. So you can see whenever I increase the padding, it increases the spaces between the H1 tag over here and other elements. So when you talk about padding, is that space between them? Like it tries to push other elements 20 pixels away from the H1 element. But talking of margin, it pushes it from the parent parent element or from the body itself. So that's the margin. So all of this, you can always look at the W3 schools over here. You can say W3 schools. This is a website that I gave you whereby you can be able to learn all of this, because whenever you want to learn something on HTML and CSS, you just go there, just look for CSS tutorial, and you'll just get started. You can see you're being told everything from scratch. And the good thing with this is that you're going even to try it by yourself. And the best way to learn something is by even trying by yourself to learn all of this. So let's proceed. Okay, let's proceed to let me look how we so we are now here. So something I would wish to do, I think we're almost set. So let's now style the image. So because you can see our image is so sharp at the corners, we can make them have some kind of rounds. So going to my images, so I target the image div, that was the parent of that image, and then the image itself. So if you want to have some kind of a round image or an image that has some rounded corners, so it's like giving a border radius. So border radius, we can say I want a border radius of almost 20 pixels. Save that. You can see the image is some kind of like has some rounded corners.
In group, in group. Nimeandika meeting.
I think somebody is communicating.
I've just muted him, boy. Go on.
Okay. Thank you. So so when we talk about border radius, it's like giving the corners to your images. If you want it to be a circle, you can just give it 50%, 50%, and then save it. even though it's not a good circle, but no problem. So you can now understand like what border radius does. It's just giving some kind of circular format to your images. So let me just have it at 20 pixels. Yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot of things today. What else can I talk about? Maybe I would just want to recap on what we've learned, and then maybe we can end it from there, because CSS is so huge. And what I've just talked about today was like introducing like how can you use CSS in your HTML. And now we've talked about the 3 ways you can use CSS. We started from the internal styling, then we went to we started from inline CSS, then we went to internal CSS, and now we've now talked about this famous external CSS. So it's always good for you to practice all the 3 of them, because it gives you the solid understanding of everything. Like you have to go out there, try it by yourself. Like even watch the recording so many times even to understand, like because sometimes you might be writing these things and even they don't work from your end. So what you do is like pay some some attention with it, try to look for some error, like why is yours not working. Sometimes it might be the issues with the divs. Sometimes maybe you're not targeting the correct spelling of the class that you're giving, or the correct IDs. So for instance, if you give an ID over here and give it a certain name, and then whenever you want to use the ID, whenever you use a dot over here, you can confirm some of the errors that you will face. You can see the welcome to my website is now thrown to the left, of which these are the errors you'll find, like why is your code not even working. So it's always good to like check your the errors that you will face maybe positively, and then you'll be able to learn from the mistake that you'll be having. And also the advantage that you have is that you have assigned everybody into groups, so that whenever you want to learn things even faster or even get a clear understanding, is by being closer to your mentor. So we are looking forward to having even the mentees being the ones encouraging the mentor that they would wish to learn. Okay, like let the mentor be the one like feel that indeed that the mentee would really want to learn some of these concepts. And at the end of this semester, it was a promise that you will only be front-end developers, and everyone will be now like be happy that they can now write a website. So I think at this point, I will end the session. Then from next week, we'll be having somebody taking us through some of the CSS layouts. So today we have just jumped into something that I never wanted to introduce. That was the flex layout, like how to arrange your CSS. Because when you visit a different website, you'll find that the website has different layouts. And those are the things that we'll be able to cover next week. So we'll be having somebody else to take us through the session, and it will be like we'll be almost be doing some positive thing on having our syllabus done. So that's all for today. So I'll be here to pick anyone with a question before we go to announcements. Thank you. So anyone with a question, maybe in the chat. So if also if there's any concern, so this is the right time to also share it with us. Okay, Kennedy, I think you pressed your hand up. Proceed.